Episode 4 begins with Chantrelle sleeping at Siobhan's house, where she reveals to the latter that the previous night, Mr. Wantage tried to enter Chantrelle's bedroom forcefully. She escapes by jumping out of the window and spends the night at Siobhan's. As the day starts, Mr. Wantage's behavior worsens. He grabs Chantrelle's waist and tries to kiss her, but she resists. Luckily, Mrs. Wantage calls for her husband, and he has to stop. Continuing his mistreatment, Mr. Wantage calls his friends over, makes Chantrelle serve drinks, and humiliates her. Meanwhile, Shelton is also upset with Leah for not telling him that she is already married. Leah says that her husband is abusive, and she plans to leave him. Shelton is heartbroken and needs time to process this, and thus, Leah decides to give him some space. As the scene changes, we see Chantrelle crying and calling Leah for help. Leah fakes period cramps at the office, and the manager, unsure how to handle it, grants her a half-day leave. Hosanna also leaves with Leah to support Chantrelle. They borrow Aston's car and head to Chantrelle's rescue. However, Hosanna starts acting strangely and takes a wrong turn, leading them to an unknown forest. She then stops to mail a letter to Aston and delays their arrival for no reason. When Leah questions Hosanna about this, she simply says she has to do it. With no time to argue, Hosanna quickly corrects her course and drives them to the correct location. Meanwhile, Aston borrows some money to pay the deposit for the dress Hosanna likes. The shopkeeper promises not to sell the dress to anyone else. However, Aston still needs more money to pay and collect the dress. He goes to an all-white club to see a well-known moneylender. Aston asks to see him alone, but the moneylender takes advantage of the situation and berates him. He even makes Aston kneel and beg for money. With no other choice, Aston has to agree. Chantrelle is home alone with Mr. Wantage and tries to leave, saying she is going to buy groceries to avoid being alone with him. However, she meets Mrs. Wantage on the way, who is upset to hear that Chantrelle left the children with Mr. Wantage. Mrs. Wantage takes Chantrelle back home with her and warns Chantrelle of the consequences of leaving the children with Mr. Wantage. As for Mr. Wantage, he takes the house keys from Chantrelle, saying he cannot trust her with them. Moments after Mrs. Wantage takes her children to school, Mr. Wantage locks Chantrelle inside the house. She screams and hits the windows, but it's no use. Mr. Wantage tries to enter her bedroom, but she closes the door, blocks it with a chair, and continues to scream for help. Finally, she sees Leah and Hosanna parking their car in front of the house and starts banging on the window to get their attention. Mr. Wantage tries to harm Chantrelle, but the girls intervene and save her. When Mrs. Wantage returns, the girl informs him about how disgusting his husband is. Mrs. Wantage doesn't believe it at first, but hesitantly confronts her husband. As for Chantrelle, she leaves the place with Leah and others, promising to herself that she'll never return. Episode Review. Episode 4 was a big improvement from the previous ones. The story had a clear conflict, and we finally understood what the characters were after. With Mr. Wantage exposed, Chantrelle can now live safely and with dignity. However, the acting still feels a bit off, like the actors aren't quite matching the characters' changing emotions. Overall, it was a good episode and set the stage for a fresh start in Chantrelle's life. Looking ahead, we might see some major drama unfold now that Chantrelle is back home. Also, Aston is in serious debt, and if he doesn't pay up soon, there could be consequences. The mystery surrounding Hosanna's relationship with her father continues, and hopefully, we'll get some answers in the upcoming episodes.